Hello, trumpet players. In this short video, we're going to talk about what I call Trumpet Monte Carlo. So, you've probably heard me say before that great trumpet playing doesn't come from your conscious mind. It comes from your subconscious mind. And that's because our subconscious mind has infinitely much more power than our conscious mind. And this is an important point, right? Because there are so many things that we have to do to be a great trumpet player that fall beyond the abilities of our conscious mind. And when we try to do this stuff with our conscious mind, I call that manhandling it or Armstronging it, trying to put more mental effort. So, but the problem is you can't possibly concentrate hard enough to get this stuff right. It's not possible. So, I was into the lesson yesterday. We weren't going to talk about this today, but I was in a lesson yesterday and it came up, so I decided to make a video about this. Because we were talking about the 50 times thing. It's one of the steps in my process for learning how to play a piece of music, is what I call this 50 times thing. And what we were talking about with him was not necessarily related to learning the piece as it was. He was complaining. He says his tongue doesn't feel right. And we'd been working on his tongue before, so it's not like, it's not like he just had never had tongue issues before. We've talked about tongue. He knows what it's supposed to be. It just didn't feel right to him. I even asked him to clarify what was wrong. And he said it just didn't feel right. It felt clumsy. And so I explained to him, because he's at this stage right now in the music for his solo contest, right? He's at this stage where he would be doing these multiple repetitions, the whole solo from the beginning to end. And I told him that one of the benefits of this is this Monte Carlo thing, that if he did these pieces, he's doing a piece that has 6 movements in it. It's theme and variations. And I told him, if you do this, the hypothetical amount of times is 50 times. If you do this 50 times, that Monte Carlo thing was going to kick in. So let me tell you what the Monte Carlo thing is, but for that we need to back up a little bit, time-wise. And this is going to sound totally unrelated, but it is related. Where I learned this approach was from my dad, who, very amazing man with the different skills that he had. And but I was changing a clutch when he was visiting one time on my pickup truck. And we had the whole thing finished. And I was under the truck with the transmission on my chest, trying to line up the shaft so it could go back into the car, back into the engine. And I tried wiggling it this way, that way. No matter which way I turned it, I just couldn't get it lined up so that it would go into the hole, the shaft go into the hole. And my dad eventually said, here, let me get under there and I'll do this. And I thought, okay, well, he must have better control over this than I do. But what he did shocked me. He got the transmission on his chest like I had it. He picked up the transmission and he starts shaking it around, wiggling it and stuff like that. And my initial thought was, you gotta be kidding me. I was almost embarrassed. I would have been embarrassed if anyone was watching. But what took me 10 minutes and I couldn't get that thing in took him about 10 seconds. That shaking it around, that shaft found its way in less than 10 seconds. So obviously my dad knew what he was doing, and I was shocked. That really did surprise me. And at first I thought, well, that must be one of his, you know, eccentrics. At first I thought it was just like a quirk that worked in his favor. But over the years, I've seen the math of it. I can see in my head the mathematics of what my father did and why it worked. And later, I was having similar issues as the student yesterday, similar issues, but this was, years ago. One of my students, and he's still my student now, one of my students is a physics professor. And in fact, when I was teaching him that specific lesson, he was head of the physics department at Rice at that time. I don't think he's the head of the department right now. I think it's one of those departments that shift the head for, like you get 2 years each or something like that. But yes, at the time he was head of the physics department at Rice University. And I told him about this thing, and he says, "Oh yes, that's called Monte Carlo." He says they use that in physics all the time for their research. Wow! So it's got a name, right? Now, what does this have to do with trumpet? Each time you play something, even if it's unsuccessful, this is what I believe. It's part of my accumulative approach, by the way. The video I did 2 weeks ago talks about my accumulative approach to practicing. This is part of that. This is one of the reasons why we have the accumulative thing set up the way it is. It is to create this subconscious response that we're talking about here. Okay? I believe that each time you play a piece of music, or an exercise, or your horn for that matter, or each time, another good example is each time you do a lip buzz, your mind stores. Now, there's ways for this not to work, but we'll get into that in a second. Your mind stores the information, whether it was successful or unsuccessful. Usually in the beginning, it's unsuccessful. Like the student yesterday complaining that his tongue felt awkward. Usually what we're talking about, it's like the technique was not there, the sound wasn't what you wanted it to be, and it can go on like that for some time. But as long as you reject that as a failure, as long as you in your mind say that's not good enough, your mind stores it as an example of what not to do. What we're waiting for at this point is for that. Now remember, all of this stuff is happening beyond our conscious recognition, right? So that magical sweet spot that we're looking for is not something that you can manhandle into happening. You can't do that. So, and it's not something that you can feel when it happened, by the way, not consciously. Subconsciously, it does happen that way. Okay? So, yes, so you've had failure, 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 failure. Then you have that one time when it wasn't as much of a failure. And your subconscious mind keeps record. Then you have another time where it's not as much of a failure, and your subconscious mind keeps track. Now, you might after that go back to more failures, but your mind remembers that, those two kind of okay ones. Then, in the midst of all this, you'll have one that happens where it's like, wow, where did that come from? That was awesome. And your mind remembers that. Now, you might not be able to replicate it immediately, but your mind remembers what that feels like. Now, the reason why a lot of times you can't replicate it immediately is because what happened in your subconscious mind, you're now trying to replicate it consciously. Doesn't work like that. I'm sorry, it doesn't work like that. That's why I've heard this many, many times in my teaching career. Oh, it was beautiful that one day. I haven't been able to get it back since. Well, that's because you've been trying to get it back. You stopped this process of Monteverdi. I keep saying Monteverdi. Monte Carlo. You stopped the Monte Carlo um, process, and now you've tried to put it back into your conscious mind. And I think that's a common theme in the trumpet world, right? We want to make that happen. And it doesn't work like that. You can't be a great player like that. The only thing you can control like that will contribute to your better playing is your environment. You can make this part of your environment, and you can make that part of your environment, and you can make that part of your environment. But the great playing has to just happen. That's the only way it can happen. So one of the things you can pull from this video is to stop trying to be a great player and start putting that same effort and that same control into being a great environment builder. It's your environment that makes you a great player. It's your environment. And I include in environment listening, practicing, going to performances, watching videos. That's your environment. You can do stuff to control your reading books about trumpet. You can control your environment. You cannot consciously control yourself into better trumpet playing. And that is the trumpet shortcut that everybody's looking for. I want to do this with my lips and now I'm a better player. I want to do this with my posture and now I'm a better player. That's not how it works. Great trumpet playing does not come from your conscious mind. You cannot concentrate nearly enough. You cannot concentrate that much enough to be a great trumpet player. It's not possible. It can't happen. It's from your subconscious that this comes from. And that's what the Monte Carlo is, right? So Monte Carlo is basically each time you play, because remember, you don't have that control yet. Effort without control produces randomness. So each time you play something, each time you do that lip buzz, each time you work on your triple tongue, all of these things, the greatness comes from your subconscious. And each time you do it, you're adding another random figure to the equation. That's that Monte Carlo thing. And eventually, that wiggling around, the shaft is going to go right in, and you're going to have that moment. I've heard it called online the aha moment. Never liked that so much. Okay? But that's what's going on, right? You have these random failures, but then because of you keep trying and because of the randomness of not having the control, you find what works. And you know what? This does not work just only for the physical stuff. It also works for jazz improvisation. This is exactly why I tell people when they're learning to play jazz, you need to spend time improvising with tracks. Because you're going to have that random failure, but there's going to be that one time when you hit that sweet spot. And that's your mind is going to say, bling, the light bulb is going to go on, right? Okay? This is what happens. This is how you become a great player. It's, they talk about in what do you call that? Self-help, motivational speaking, right? You have to have a sequence of failures first before you have a success. You have to have a sequence of failures first before you have a success. This is right in line with that. That model is the Monte Carlo method for trumpet. Failure, success. And like I said, sometimes it's not a complete 100% success. Sometimes it's just not nearly as bad as it was. But your mind keeps track of all that. And this, by the way, you've heard me say that there's only one good reason to practice a lot, and that is if you have a deadline. Well, what if you want to be a great player in 2 years? That is your deadline. And you've got a lot of failing to do before you get there. Does that make sense? You have a lot of failing to do before you get to that sweet spot. Now, let's talk about certain things that will make the Monte Carlo thing on trumpet not work. This is almost as important as knowing about the Monte Carlo for trumpet, right? This all rides on the fact that this is subconscious. And your subconscious is kind of a fickle thing. So there are certain things that you can do to ruin it. One of those things is your attitude. If you have a I can't attitude or that's too hard attitude, you will ruin the whole Monte Carlo thing because you won't recognize that subconsciously, you won't recognize the success when it happens. It comes down to your belief. Do you actually believe you can do this? If you don't believe you can do this, your subconscious mind cannot process this data correctly. If you don't believe, and there's all kinds of reasons why people don't believe. Some people believe because everyone's told them they're no good. Like outside influences, right? Some people don't believe because they're so old. I've seen this. Oh, I'm so old, I won't get this because, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, you said it. Now it's true. That kind of stuff can cause this system, this Monte Carlo thing, to not work. And I know this makes it sound almost like, what do you call that, cult stuff, right? Because, you know, that whole, once you start getting into beliefs, yes, I believe you can do this, believe it, then you start sounding like more like a religion. But guess what? You can't separate your music from your religion anyway. And if you have been separating your music from your religion, that wasn't a good thing. You cannot separate, you've heard me say many times over, you cannot separate the music from the people. So, yes, this is the point where the belief comes into play. If you believe you can't do it, it's not going to happen. This Monte Carlo stuff won't work for you. And the bottom line is, nothing will. If you believe that you can't do this, for whatever reason, then it's not going to happen. Now, there's a flip side of this, also mental. If you don't care what comes out of your horn, if you don't care how good it is, when we're doing those 50 failures, they actually have to be registered in your mind as failures. You have to actually acknowledge them as not being good enough. If you don't, if what you think I'm saying is that everything is just okay, this is not going to work for you. The Monte Carlo thing cannot be blind like that. It can't be blind at it. It has to be clearly marked when it comes into your brain. This one is a failure. Don't do that again. This one is a failure. Don't do that again. If you in your mind say, well, it's all okay, this Monte Carlo thing will not work. And for the same reason, because I think this is how we learn. I don't think just because you might have a different philosophy that it's not going to work this way. So what I'm saying is, if you don't judge what comes out of your bell as good or bad, you won't be a great player, no matter what philosophy you're following. It's not possible. So you have to say to yourself, no, this is not good enough. And you know what? That's tough. That's tough for some people, especially in the generation that we live in today, where you've been told all along everything is wonderful. That's tough to face failure like that over and over and over again. It's tough. It's hard on your psyche, right? It's emotionally taxing. So those are the two things. Now, another thing that can prevent this from working is if you don't listen to music. If you don't listen to great trumpet playing, how are you supposed to know subconsciously when you did it right or when you did it wrong? Right? Without listening, you don't have a model to compare it to. So those are three things that can prevent it from happening. So the Monte Carlo is not, you can't just now say, oh, I'll just keep playing hundreds of times and that'll make me a better player? No. Not if these things are going against you. Not if you're not listening. Not if you're not judging what's coming out of your horn. And not if your belief doesn't actually include the reality that you can actually do this. Those three things have to be present. But if they are present, and you spend that time, random data, right? And that random data, I'm just going to remind you one more time before I sign off. That random data is just you trying to do it again, and again, and again, and again. Okay? That's how we get to great trumpet playing. Not through our conscious mind, through our subconscious mind. All the stuff I teach today is about maximizing the abilities of your subconscious mind. It's all mental. All of it. Even the stuff from the very beginning, the stuff I first started teaching, the Physical Trumpet Pyramid, that's all mental. The Physical Trumpet Pyramid is all about Monteverdi. I keep saying Monteverdi. Monte Carlo. Monteverdi is, yeah. Monte Carlo. The Physical Trumpet Pyramid is all about Monte Carlo. It's about, the Physical Trumpet Pyramid is an obstacle course for your air, right? And each time you do it, now I tell people don't drill the exercises, right? Don't drill the routine. Don't, if your lip slurs weren't perfect, don't do them again today. Do them again tomorrow. You're gonna have to do them again tomorrow anyway. That's all about Monte Carlo. You have a failure. It sounds horrible. It sounds horrible. If you acknowledge that it sounds horrible, that's another data set that your subconscious mind has processed. And over time, that data set randomly hits certain sweet spots. And those lip slurs are going to start sounding better and better and better as you hit more and more sweet spots. Okay, so everything I teach now is about this Monte Carlo thing. It's all about mental stuff. The physical stuff, the physical success, and the musical success are physical manifestations of the mental. I know that makes me sound almost guru-like, right? And I don't mean it that way. I actually mean it very clinically, okay? The guru stuff makes it sound like you need me to help you with this, and it's not true, right? I'm not creating a scenario here where you actually need me to hold your hand. You don't need me to hold your hand. You just need to know what's broken down in the way that you're doing this. Right? And usually what's broken down for most trumpet players is that they're trying to manhandle all of this stuff. They're trying to concentrate hard enough. You can't possibly concentrate hard enough to be a great player. Doesn't happen. So, anyway, food for thought, right? All right, so God bless you guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. If you have questions about this stuff, please feel free to ask below. I think for a lot of you, this is going to really be an eye-opener video. And for those of you who have been following my stuff, this might help give you a deeper understanding about the way I approach all this stuff. Okay? Anyway, very good. God bless you. We'll see you on the next video. Bye. Thank you for watching this video. I wanted to spend just a minute to let you know that there's a better, more convenient, more organized way to access all of these videos. We have literally hundreds of videos here on YouTube, and quite frankly, it's a bit of a mess. So, to make it a little bit more organized and easier for you to access what you want to access, I created a separate page, a separate area on my website. That's eddielewis.com. And if you go to eddielewis.com, click on the menu, click on videos. It will take you there. I have the videos categorized, and then within those categories, some of them, like the educational videos, you can click on it and go in there and look for the videos specifically that you're looking for. Okay? So go to eddielewis.com, EDDIELEWIS.com. Thank you very much.